supplements should be a complement to a whole food diet. Like, you should not be using supplements as a, to fill your diet. It shouldn't be something that you rely on. Real whole foods first. That should make up the bulk of your diet, 95% even. And that's because whole food is more satiating. It helps with blood glucose control. It helps prevent disease, phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, all of those things that you get in real food.
Welcome to the Feisty Women's Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Sara Gross, Ironman champion, PhD in women's history, and founder and CEO of Feisty Media. I started this show because I wanted to cut through the BS of diet culture and fitness culture and actually learn from high-achieving women at the top of their game who have figured out how to feel and perform their best at every stage of life. So I chat with experts, elite athletes, and leaders who have learned to succeed despite the massive gender data gap in exercise and medical science and product development. Every episode is filled with information, advice, and anecdotes that will help you fulfill your potential as an athlete, mom, leader, or business owner. And listen up, if you don't subscribe to our Women's Performance newsletter, you are definitely missing out. It's totally free. So head over to womensperformance.com and subscribe now. That's womensperformance.com. This podcast is a production of Feisty Media. Hi, Feisties. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day so far. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Today, I have a really fun interview with someone, does anyone have kind of internet friends or Instagram/Facebook friends that you kind of know from the internet and you maybe talk to each other sometimes, but you've never met in person, or you share the same values because of the types of things they tend to post, and you've just never had a chance to talk to them? Well, luckily for me, I have been able to talk to Elizabeth Inpyn this week for the podcast. She is someone who I've known for a long time via the internet, but have never actually met or talked to. Like many of our guests, Elizabeth is a lifetime athlete and a coach. She was an NCAA Division I distance swimmer and water polo player who transitioned into triathlon after college. Elizabeth has an undergraduate degree in biochemistry, a master's in applied exercise science, a master's in education and health sciences, and she's also a certified sports nutritionist and holds a plant-based nutrition certification from the T. Colin Campbell Institute. So basically, she knows her shit when it comes to sports nutrition. She has a lot of experience working with high-level athletes. So I asked Elizabeth a lot of questions that I was wondering about supplements and about some of the more common challenges she sees for female athletes. And besides the fact that I felt like I was talking to an old friend, I also love how Elizabeth intertwines her own story with her clear love and expertise in human nutrition and performance. And on top of it all, Elizabeth also works with two of our key sponsors here at Feisty, Inside Tracker and Fuelin app. And so we also talk a little bit about how we can use those two tools and use them together to create our best performances as athletes. That's enough from me. We're just going to have a little word from our sponsors, and then we talk to Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sara. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
I am actually quite excited. I've seen your name and face on the internet a lot because we've both kind of been hanging around the Ironman triathlon world for a while. And I remember coming across, because you were quite vocal, as I recall, about 50 Women to Kona, as was I back when we were trying to advocate to get equal number of slots for the pro women as the pro men at the Ironman World Championship. And then I was chatting with you before the show, and you said you had a bit of an arc on that, or that you had learned something. Tell me about that. I wanted to hear it, but I didn't want to waste it before the show. So
it's So, gosh, that seems like so long ago that we were doing that. I mean, and it was years and years ago. So for those that maybe weren't familiar with it, Iron Man didn't have an equal number of pro men and women. And their logic behind that was, I don't know if it's like the electoral college. Well, there are more more men participating, and all the excuses. The sport is more entertaining for men, so we have more men at the front. There's more room for men. I mean, the list went on and on.
There's not enough room on the pier. It was my
right.
personal favorite. And then they proceeded to add, like in the next couple of years, over 200 more people to the race.
And how those people got on, I'm not exactly
how
sure.
Did they fit? Yeah.
I don't think they enlarged the pier at all, but I'm not an expert. So it just, and it was at a time in my life when I think I was kind of finding my voice. I have always been historically very conflict averse. I have opinions, but I always tried to be that person that, well, what you think is what you think, and I'm going to think this. And I think it was a key moment, I think, in my own development of realizing you need to speak up, and it's okay to speak up, and that's not going to make people dislike you, and it's not going to make you seem angry. And if anything, at the time, my young niece was starting, to get into triathlon, and I could look at her and see and think, I don't want her to feel like she doesn't have an equal spot, or that men's racing is more entertaining. And it kind of just ignited a spark in me that speaking up. And then, here we are, 8 years later, and exactly how many. And boy, do I have an opinion on just about everything. And I quite enjoy sharing it from everything that's going on in our crazy world right now. But it really just sparked this passion in me to speak up when something isn't right, or when a voice isn't being heard. And I just think that there weren't enough women at the time that felt like they could say anything, because they didn't want to make Iron Man mad, and or again look like they were causing a stir. I definitely remember getting direct messages of people, why are you causing such a stir? Iron Man's fine. And I thought, well, okay, maybe for you.
Totally. I thought that's great. It sounds like you sort of found your voice around that. And in a way, like I had a similar journey too, around, like, that was the first time that I stood up for something and actually had like media attention around it too, like where I got vocal. And I decided to write about it. I kind of went all in on that and started working with, like, when I got interviewed more because of that. And I realized, the media actually has an impact. And that's how I ended up kind of here as well. Like, okay, let's produce podcasts. Let's advertise more women's voices and have more different opinions out there, et cetera, et cetera. So it was definitely pivotal for me as well. So I love that was your journey too.
And it's amazing that it takes something, feeling like it's being taken away, or that it's the access isn't there, to get you to speak up. Right. And to change the course of your professional and personal life. Mm-hmm. It's remarkable. I'm so glad that we, for all the problems that the world has right now, I'm glad that we can speak up.
Yeah. And I also had we're not even on nutrition yet, but I definitely had a moment with it around, like, everyone is entitled to an opinion, but not all opinions have equal value or need to have equal value. And that, if I was going to speak up about something, I want to gather the information first, right? I want to know why, and really understand my why, and be able to back that up too, because there's so many opinions in the world, obviously, like Twitter's and Twitter seems to be the hotbed for it. But yeah, knowing, just helping me to really kind of, I'm like, the listeners can't see me, but I'm pulling my hands together, kind of pulled together, why do I have an opinion specifically about this? Is it worth stating publicly? And what am I going to do with it?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I've always admired this about you, is that you bring in other educated opinions. Like you don't just let people kind of spout off. And I think the value in having different opinions on different sides, but listening to the reasoning behind there, and really presents a full, you don't just present one side or one, idea or whatever. Like it's a very well-rounded, and I think that's important for discussion because, like you said, not all opinions are great, but we still have to understand other people's opinions in order to either change their mind or potentially change our mind.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And speaking of educated opinions, I really would like yours on some nutrition topics. You mentioned before the show that you sort of had, in addition to like all your education experience with nutrition, that you also had your own journey around trying out a plant-based diet and not plant-based diet. I would love to hear about that because I have a little bit of a journey too, but mine's just like total experience. I don't have the education piece. So tell me about that.
Sure. So when I started this, I didn't have the education piece to go along with it either. I was in my early 20s. I mean, and I had, college experience, but the sports nutrition side, I didn't have that component of it yet. And I guess kind of like a lot of women at that age, you're kind of trying to figure out what works for you in life and career. And at the time, that's when blogs really started, to get popular, and I would read different blogs, and there were a lot around, the raw food, plant-based movement for health, right? And I mean, I can still think of different blogs that I would find and read and try recipes. And I thought, well, this was post-college, and I had kind of stopped swimming. I was a swimmer, and going from swimming like 6 hours a day, 4 to 6 hours a day, to doing, nothing, your body changes and you get a little more, it was the first time in my life I ever had to think about what I was eating. And that message, that kind of, well, control, you have some ownership and control over what goes into your body. Let's try different things. And I think, pretty sure I tried the zone diet or whatever, that, and I kind of fell into the plant-based, even raw plant-based for a while, because I listened to the messages, and there's, good points and bad points, which we can discuss later, but I kind of fell prey to that, almost a religion of putting only good, clean things into your body, and that's going to, then you will. And at that time, it wasn't even about performance. It was just about health. I thought, yeah, I'm going to live till I'm 100, and, my body will look great. And it's all this clean. It's one of my least favorite words. If you washed your food, it's clean. Other than that, then clean and dirty just doesn't. And I mean, dirty food sounds more fun.
Dirty food. Yeah.
Like, give me the dirty food any day of the week. Who wants
totally
clean food? Is boring. So, but through that, I, it was not healthy, and it started an obsession with the connection between food and my body, and I only eating, and again, I wasn't, when done in the right context, I think a plant-based diet can be very beneficial for some people, and I think there's certainly pros for doing it. So this isn't, I'm not bashing plant-based diets. I wasn't doing it correctly. I was doing it more obsessively. And, I'm trying to think if at that point I had lost my period yet. I think that was more later when I was under fueling. I didn't enjoy eating. I was tired all the time. Skin and hair and nails, it wasn't healthy. My digestion was messed up. And looking back, I realized I wasn't, able to really put on muscle. And I just kind of, it wasn't a healthy diet for me. I was absolutely missing out on some pretty vital vitamins and minerals and nutrients.
So was it those physical things that made you realize, like you said, like your nails, your hair, like, is that kind of what made you realize, oh, this isn't good for me?
Yes.
Yeah.
And bacon. I
And
realized
what?
I missed bacon. I was
Oh,
like, I think that's
bacon.
like the gateway drug back. I think I had something and I thought, you know what, this is actually, and then I realized that I wasn't specifically doing it. I mean, I know I wasn't doing it strictly for ethical reasons or, like a lot of plant-based people do. And I went, this just isn't really the way that I want to live. And then I started to learn that there's a balance between the dietary choices that you make and whether you're making some for ethical reasons or some for health reasons or some to fill vitamin and mineral deficiencies. It's highly personal and highly, I think it evolves over your life and it suits you at one time. Is it going to suit you at another?
Yeah. And so when you work with athletes who are vegetarian or plant-based, what do you suggest for them?
Sure. I will support them 100% in their choices. And that's where the discussion often comes of, let's get some blood work done and let's see what's going on inside to know, okay, are there some vitamin B deficiencies, which is pretty common in plant-based athletes? Vitamin D, are you getting enough of that? What do your iron stores look like? And sometimes, what does your cholesterol look like? Because they might be plant-based, but they might not be making the best choices for plant-based. They're using fake meats or fake, they're living off bars. And because it's easy or convenient. And, I think we've all heard like Oreos are vegan,
Right.
like, or Pop-Tarts are vegan. And it's like, that doesn't mean that that's what you should have all the time. So, addressing those needs and then understanding why their decision is plant-based. And if it's ethical, there's not much, okay, nothing comes from animals. That's your choice. But if it's more, I think this is better for my health, then I look at, do you have a family history of heart disease? Okay, that's probably a good choice to go more plant-based. Are you trying to get pregnant? We might have to add in, especially if you are going to be pregnant, we might have to add in some eggs, and omega-3s and DHEA, like supplements that will help the baby. And so it's understanding what their goals are and then kind of guiding them through that. And for endurance athletes, especially, are all of your, there's a fine balance between meeting your protein needs and overdoing it on carbohydrates, because a lot of plant-based sources of protein are higher in carbohydrates. So kind of finding that balance of meeting all of their needs. Yeah. So like an ongoing discussion and puzzle where we try to fit different things together.
Right. How did you find the right balance for you in terms of nutrition and what you're eating on a day? Because it sounds like you had sort of a personal journey with it. Like, where did you land?
I landed on probably, I would say 80% plant-based. And that's more of, I just happen to love, vegetables and salads and blood work kind of determined, like, I need red meat in my diet. Even when I supplement, I'm constantly low. So I have red meat. Fish is a really healthy source of protein for me. I like it, so I include it a lot. Eggs, the choline in eggs, and again, an affordable source of protein to kind of meet those needs. So it's things that I like and enjoy, but also having done blood work and having seen kind of how my body feels, I can tell pretty quickly if I'm not eating enough or if I'm lagging on certain things, like, if I'm not getting enough of like the probiotic foods in my diet. I can tell my gut, it's not the same as when I'm being mindful.
Oh, you can tell.
I can.
Interesting. How can you tell that? Because that's one thing I have never, there's some parts, having been an elite athlete, like there's some things I can tell right away. Like I know I'm pretty quick to realize things, but like gut and microbiome, that stuff, like I don't have any read. How do I know?
Well, I would say, it's kind of such a personal discussion. Are your bowel movements regular every day?
I think so, but that's because of coffee.
Yeah, well,
so I feel like I'm
try, maybe try a couple days with like your coffee later on in the day and see, if so regular bowel movements is one. Gas, bloating, Appetite changes if you're not properly digesting and eliminating a lot of your foods, your appetite will change. And so I can tell like, oh, if I didn't eat very well the day before, my stomach just, it'll then take another day or so. Or if I'm traveling, notoriously when I travel, my body just does not like traveling. And so digestion is a bit off. You can feel a bit full. If certain foods that shouldn't make you tired, you consume them, all of a sudden you're like, God, this always makes me feel just kind of blah. Then, and before it didn't, something is off.
Right. Interesting. I'm going to start paying attention.
Yeah, I know. You got to listen. And my athletes will know, aside from asking them about bowel movements and gas and bloating, it's like, are you peeing regularly? What color is your urine? Because we're looking at all of the things. And when we're looking at their blood work, it's like, oh, they say, no one knows me better. Like my spouse doesn't even know me this well. And I'm having these discussions with you, but it's all important. It's all, for people, athletes that love data so much, we're sure shy on not sharing the data that really matters on a daily basis.
Totally. Although I don't know, I know a lot of athletes who aren't shy about talking about talking about their bowels or whatever, especially from Ironman, when you you have to have a strategy for that,
Oh, yes, you do.
What about supplements? Like, when you work with athletes, do you recommend supplements? How do you decide? And are those supplements different? What you might recommend for women, would it be different to what you'd recommend for men?
Definitely. And this is kind of a fuel, and it's part of our mantra. Supplements should be a complement to a whole food diet. Like, you should not be using supplements as to fill your diet. It shouldn't be something that you rely on. Real whole foods first. That should make up the bulk of your diet, 95% even. And that's because whole food is more satiating. It helps with blood glucose control. It helps prevent disease, phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, all of those things that you get in real food. Not to mention the social aspect of eating real food. And, it's
right. Oh, you mean like if someone's replacing like a whole meal with a shake?
Oh, yeah. And people do it. Yeah. Yeah. And athletes too. And, I've done it. I'm not pointing the finger. It's convenient. It's fast. You're training twice a day. You're exhausted. It's easier to just, have a shake or pop a multivitamin and go, oh yeah, I didn't get any veggies. I've had athletes do this. Like, well, I don't eat a lot of veggies, but I have a multivitamin. So it's like, okay, okay, that's great. Thank you for taking, but so you shouldn't be relying on supplements as an excuse to eat a poor diet. Whole real food is best. However, if you've had, and I'm very adamant about not just telling people to take supplements, get your blood work done and know what it is that your body is lacking or your body needs. There's definitely some common components that I see in pretty much every athlete, but I'm going to recommend different things if you have high cholesterol and we need to work on that, than if your, ferritin levels are low. So you don't want to over prescribe things. And I think it's very easy in our society to want to pop a pill and solve a problem or have it as insurance or whatever. And we can all get caught up in that, the marketing. Even when I see a new supplement or pill come out and I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to try that. Well, that sounds interesting. Even though I know it's like, that's probably not going to do much, but it's still the lure of something that will help performance or help sleep or help digestion there. And I get it, but it's definitely something that you don't want to just guess.
As a lifelong runner and triathlete turned CrossFitter, I am stoked to announce that the athletic eyewear brand Tifosi Optics has joined us as a partner here at Feisty Media. Tifosi sports glasses hit all the marks for athletes. They're shatterproof polybicarbonate, so the lenses not only reduce glare, but also offer scratch resistance, which I 100% need. They stay in place when you are moving. The hydrophilic rubber nose pads actually get more grippy the more you sweat, so they are secure and don't slide down your face even when you're running in hot conditions. No matter what sport you do, Tifosi has shades for you. Whether you love tennis, fishing, pickleball, running, cycling, or just hanging out on the beach. They are super reasonably priced, which I love, so I can have multiple pairs that go with any outfit. And of course, Feisty listeners get a special discount. So head on over to TifosiOptics.com and use the code FM20. FM as in Feisty Media to get 20% off your order. That's FM20 at TifosiOptics.com. I'll put a link in the show notes to make it easy for you. Building muscle can be tough, and gains can be so slow, even for those of us who do a lot of strength training. As an ex-endurance athlete who is now in perimenopause, I know this all too well. It can be frustrating to put in the time in the gym and not see the results I'm looking for. That's why it's super important to take the right supplements at the right time. One of those supplements is essential amino acids, which are needed to trigger muscle protein synthesis. Muscle protein synthesis happens when you eat high-quality protein, like eggs or whey. And by supplementing with additional essential amino acids, you can make sure you are getting the full benefit of your training sessions. Targeted essential amino acid formulas can be up to 4 times more effective than just eating protein. I've been taking amino acids for almost a year, and in combination with eating quality protein and a couple other supplements, I have managed to turn the tides on age-related muscle loss, which starts at 30 for women, by the way, and I have continued to make strength gains as I head towards 50. AminoCo has been a long-time sponsor of Feisty Media and has supported all of our brands and podcasts over the years. I recommend starting with AminoCo Perform, and you can grab some at aminoco.com/performance. If you enter the code PERFORMANCE, you will save 30% and receive a free gift if it is your first purchase. Give it a try and let me know how it goes. That's aminoco.com/performance and use the code PERFORMANCE to save 30%. For decades, running shoes have been researched, tested, and designed for men. Brands have relied on the shrink it and pink it approach to sell male shoes to female customers. That's why we are so excited to be working with Hedas. Hedas designs athletic footwear for women that elevates performance, safety, and style. Hedas unlocks the science behind women's biomechanics through dedicated research, creates better shoes for women that support their longevity and performance, and establishes new design standards to promote transparency in a male-biased industry. Hedas have a lower ankle collar to reduce rubbing, a breathable mesh toe box to allow for ventilation and to allow for female toe shape, a special kind of plate in the midsole to keep tired legs going, a narrow heel cup to reduce heel slippage and take the pressure off our Achilles, and a rounded instep to create a snug fit. Hedas has 3 shoe models designed for different sessions: the Alma Cruise for long runs, the Alma Tempo for training days, and the Alma Speed for pushing the pace. I've personally been running in the Alma Cruise and I love them. It's the shoe I always wanted and never knew I needed. The fit is perfect in every way. You can get your own pair of Hedas at hedas.com and use the code Feisty20 for 20% off. That's Feisty20 at hedas.com, and it will all be in the show notes.
Test
Yeah.
first.
Are there any supplements that you think all active women should take?
Vitamin D or vitamin D3 is definitely one that I think is a good idea. And especially with its relation to depression and anxiety. And I think it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Might as well pop that in, that like your mental health is very important. And I notice when I'm not taking, if I'll go through a season of not taking vitamin D, which mine is always low, I can tell I'm just not the same. I'm not the same person.
How does that show up for you personally?
I am less interested in participating in sport or social things. I am more introverted, which if you know me all of 10 seconds, I'm the least introverted person you will ever encounter. I will sleep as opposed to like going out and doing something. So I can feel it pretty quickly. I know like something's off. So vitamin D3, I would say, is pretty safe bet.
Mhm.
Um, an iron supplement, again, probably a pretty safe bet, especially if you're a menstruating female. And like I have a very heavy cycle, especially if you're someone that has a heavy cycle. Um, I think a probiotic supplement is probably a good idea for most people, especially if you're not including those foods with pre and probiotics. So yogurt, kefir, kimchi, miso, all of those kinds of things.
Mhm.
Um, and then for plant-based athletes, a B complex for sure
Mhm.
is pretty useful. In general, I think a turmeric supplement is an excellent idea.
Turmeric supplement. What does that do?
The older I get, the more I'm like, my body just hurts all the time. I
Oh, okay.
want, so for lowering inflammation,
Mhm.
helping with any kinds of pain, aches and pains, turmeric is excellent for circulation. It's an antioxidant. So it's overall, I count that as one of my like health supplements, not necessarily. So performance supplements are one thing, and then health, everyday health are another. And I put turmeric in that category. And I think anyone that's taken turmeric for an extended period of time and then stops will tell you like, oh yeah, my back started hurting again, or I felt my knees, or,
Oh,
and again,
interesting.
a quality supplement. Don't go to the like Costco where they sell, I think if you can get a bottle of pills for
Okay.
$19.99 and it's like a 60-day serving, probably not worth you should probably, again, not to buy the most expensive kind, but do the research and use a reputable brand if
Right.
you're throwing your money away otherwise.
Yeah. And would cooking with turmeric also?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I would say include it in everything. I do that turmeric tea or turmeric latte, the golden milk latte got popular for a while. I like that at night. I think that's a great one. And including it in your food. Anytime you can include herbs and spices in your food, you're going to see a benefit.
Mm.
There's phytonutrients in those, cinnamon for blood sugar control, ginger for any kind of stomach ailment, for immune supporting. There's a reason that these spices and herbs have been around as long as they have, and
Right.
cultures long before we came along were using them
Yeah.
without, they didn't have the science in the lab. They just knew that their bodies responded better and they felt better and they were healthier for incorporating all of these things.
So then when you're working with an athlete, will you typically do a blood test, try to get them to do a blood test? What about something like we're sponsored by Inside Tracker?
They're the only people I let touch my blood.
Oh, amazing. Okay. So
Yeah,
how do you like when you get the results, right? I got my Inside Tracker results and they sort of tell you a little bit about what you're supposed to take, whatever. But are you able to go more in depth with the results and give people recommendations?
definitely. Yep.
Yeah.
We can look at trends over time. I can get a good family history, especially for things like cholesterol. I want to know, because cholesterol is very much genetics, and so many endurance athletes I see have cholesterol issues, and looking at them, you would be like, they're in the best shape in the world. And so
Mhm.
I look at stuff like that. We look at then exactly like what they're eating and when they're eating it, what kinds of supplements they're taking. And I think what I love about Inside Tracker is they make it very understandable, and you can keep a record so you can see where you were when you tested at this time and then when you tested again at this time.
Mhm.
And their food recommendations, I think it helps. Athletes are stubborn. If they hear it from Inside Tracker and they hear it from me,
Right.
it's more cohesive. It's like they're getting it from both sides.
Yeah.
They're more likely to believe it. And then they're curious. They say, oh, well, if this is optimal, why do you think I'm below optimal? And then we can talk about it. It starts a
Right.
discussion.
Right. That's hilarious. I think, you know how Inside Tracker, I think it's a bit of a gimmick, but I kind of love it where they give you your internal age.
Oh gosh.
Like I admit to being like overly focused on the internal age. Like when they tell you, oh, you need to eat more beans. I'm like, I may or may not do that. Like the actual thing that might help. Like, but I'm super focused on like getting my internal age down for the next
Yeah,
test.
it's a badge of honor, especially because at 43 years old, I don't feel like I'm that old, which it's neither here nor there. So when I look at my inside age and I'm like, 27, you're darn right. That's
You
how I
got
feel.
you got 27?
Yeah, I did. Well, this was when I was 40. And I'm like, okay, at 40, my inner age is that. Yes, yes.
Wow. Okay, I did it. I was 45. That was a year ago, and I got 41. And I was very upset that I was like still over 40.
But this is why previous to that test, again, vitamin D was off, iron was off, my glucose was up, which was odd. I was low carbohydrate for this test. And it was, I think when I was 38 and it was 36 or something like it was not,
Right.
it wasn't, and I went, so that's when, again, I see it's like this badge of honor to have your inner age. And I thought, okay, I'm changing things, moving this along. Thank you, oatmeal. Thank you, beans.
Yeah, I admittedly didn't like follow the instructions very well. So I feel like I might have been a little like dehydrated. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. See, and that's the other thing too. Athletes don't know you shouldn't take you shouldn't do your blood work after 24 hours after a really hard session.
Right.
You test it, don't change your diet. You can take out some supplements before. There's a lot of things that can impact, I should say, the test.
Yeah. So as someone who's worked with a lot of female endurance athletes, do you see general trends, like things that we can be looking out for, and what are they?
Number one would be fueling properly, fueling adequately, fueling for the work that you're actually doing. So many female and some male, this isn't just a female issue, but primarily in the female athletes that I work with, they're underfueled. They are not, and I don't know if it's because they're worried about gaining weight and they think that's going to affect performance, if it's because they've heard the different diet trends of intermittent fasting or low carbohydrate or whatever it may be, that's impacted them. But when I can convince them to not only incorporate more food on a day-to-day basis, but during training sessions, and they see like, oh, I'm feeling so much better. I think they're recovering so much faster is a huge component. I just had a female athlete that, is very low carb. That had kind of been a focus, and she was doing a marathon, and she said, we talked about having more carbohydrates and we implemented them kind of the, week before. And she's like, this just feels like so much. And the race was a Saturday. And she said Sunday, she goes, I felt like I could have ran again. And I've never felt like that from, during a race or after a race. And it's because, you take care of your body and you feed it and fuel it properly. Mm-hmm. It's going to respond. Our bodies want to recover and want to be able to rebuild muscle. And so I think the underfueling component is definitely something that I see quite frequently that I would like to just, and the detrimental effects of underfueling, you don't see them right away. And then all of a sudden, that's when the stress fractures happen. That's when, and I underfueled. I've told this story before, but at the time, Matt Dixon with Purple Patch was coaching me, and he pulled me out of the pool one morning and said, I'm worried. What's going on? And it just obsessing over performance and seeing at the time, again, this was years ago, 2014, 2015, only the like super lean triathlete or lean runner image, thinking that would be faster and better. And, I didn't have a period for years.
Wow.
And it was like, oh, well, convenient.
Mhm.
And you can kind of ignore, all the while not realizing the damage that it was doing to my bones, raising, cancer risk, hair falling out, night sweats, like all of those things that you can ignore. And I think a lot of females ignore because they want to look a certain way, or they think they're going to perform, and, takes a couple stress fractures and you're like, yeah, okay, I get it now. And, I think Holly Lawrence has been pretty vocal about that. And other kind of pro triathletes have said, if you don't fuel properly, eventually you have to pay for that.
Yeah, I think, I saw it a lot of my career with people. Like sometimes you would get away with one good result. So somebody might be under fueling, get a little lighter and run faster on one occasion, and then just hold that in their head as like, but I was successful here, when it's not, like, for the long term, it's not sustainable. And then get stuck in a loop of like under fueling.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you how did you mentally cope with like getting out of that cycle and like actually teaching yourself to eat more? Because I know, like, I've talked to a lot of people about this, and it's pretty hard to eat more. Like you just said, you had an athlete who's like, that seems like a lot of carbs, right? Like that's how it feels. So how did you sort of talk yourself into it?
I would say it's still a daily process years later, still every now and then, and I love social media for a lot of things, but I dislike it for a lot of things. And, anytime someone comments, because the last 3 years, I really got into strength training, which was the best sporting decision I have made maybe ever. But it completely changed my body completely, like probably at least 10 pounds heavier, but yet the same, like, I mean, my arms and whatever are bigger, but like body fat percentage didn't change. So this was like solid muscle, and people will still, oh, wow, like you're so much bigger than you used to be, or,
People say that to you?
oh gosh.
Oh,
Yeah. They're like, oh, and I think some people intend it as a compliment, but it's not always received that way. And so,
well, and not always appropriate to be commenting on someone else's body. Just full stop.
You're agreed. But the counter argument to that is, then why do you post pictures on Instagram if you don't want? And it's like, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that I was submitting this for a public,
right, for public.
Like I didn't ask in the comment. I didn't say, please let me know what you think of my legs today.
Yeah. Totally.
Oh God. So I think for anyone that struggles with that, it's not just a magical overnight, all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, great, I'm going to eat stuff. Because my health was suffering, and because I didn't want to be the injured athlete anymore. Mm-hmm. I did, not having a cycle. It's like, well, I want to have kids someday. And, all these other bigger, more important things. And then there were other female athletes that I admired so much, like Meredith Kessler, for example, who was very much like, you have to eat, you have to be, this is what I eat. This is so more women that were strong and fast.
Yeah.
Sharing what they did helped to make it easier. And then once I started actually eating and fueling properly, it was such a night and day difference that I didn't ever want to go back to underfueling. And and then life just got better. When you're underfueled, you're not happy, you're not, obsessing about food isn't ever fun.
It's not fun. And then also like there's other knock-on effects. Like if I think about like, if you're not eating enough, you get like spacey in the brain, and like you're like not enjoying life as much in certain moments, right? So I can see how there'd be like an overall cumulative effect that's like, hey, my life just got better because I'm eating properly.
Yes,
yeah, totally. I want to hit on strength training too, because I also had this, What's that?
Nailed you. I remember watching you do pull up, like building your pull-ups and being like, I'm doing that. Look at her go. She's so strong.
Yeah. I love it now. It's one of those things that like, we didn't know, like you didn't know what you didn't know. So like I have this, and it's not, I'm not someone who, I don't sit and regret like at all, but I do realize like that if I had known, or if I'd had a coach that had known the effect that strength training was going to have on me before I started. Like I retired from professional triathlon, started doing CrossFit, and that therefore started doing more strength training than I had been doing. Now I realize, oh, I would have been way stronger on the bike. Like I always struggled with my bike strength. Like I wasn't doing enough strength work. And then my coach was like making decisions based on studies that were done only on men that said that endurance athletes only need to do sport specific strength. So that was like big gear stuff on the bike, which like super helpful. Right. But like not heavy, like, I should have been doing like heavy squats. Right? And so now I sort of recognize that. So just to pull this back to the nutrition piece. So like when an athlete is like, now we've sort of had this bit of revolution, and I could see how like there's way more women lifting and understanding the importance of that for their training or for their overall health. Like, so how do we recover properly from a strength program, whether that's like for life or to also incorporate endurance training? Sorry, that was like a massive question.
But it's an important question, because I think one of the reasons that endurance athletes don't, especially females, don't do this is because it takes away time from their swim, bike, and run training. And they think like, oh, there's no value in it. And when they do try to do it, they're exhausted. And then they don't have the ability to like train as hard, or they think they could not train as hard because they're, strength work is hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not that like the stuff that I thought it was before. It's like when you do it properly, your body feels it. So I think that women should, and men, I think creatine is very much undervalued in the supplement world. And I think it's a game changer for recovery, performance. Studies now have shown the cognitive effects. I mean, I have, my parents, aging parents, it helps, with dementia and maintaining breaks. And
really?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yes. Anyone that's had any concussion or head injuries, creatine, I don't know, because I don't do nutrition for the NFL, but they should all be taking it. I mean, if I had daughters that played soccer, the concussion risk for heading the ball, like they would be on creatine. So I think that is a supplement specific that will help not just with strength training, but with performance overall and recovery.
Yeah. Is there timing with the creatine supplement?
Yes and no. I think if you're using it specifically for strength, then having it before is helpful. But I think for the majority of us, I mean, I take it after I strength train. It doesn't make that much of a difference unless you're specifically lifting to try to, unless you're doing like Olympic lifting or some kind of CrossFit like that. So just taking it daily is beneficial. And for the daily 3 to 5 grams, and I think, females at 110 to 160 pounds, you're probably okay with that 3 grams. 3 grams a day mark. And creatine, again, it's one of the least expensive, most widely studied, clean, safe supplements to take. So I think that will help. And then where the strength training is concerned, it really does come down to making sure you're meeting your protein requirements for the day and getting that in. Your carbohydrates are great for a lot of things. We need them, for endocrine health and brain function and for sports performance, especially. But then, protein plays a pretty significant role in muscle development and recovery. And I think a lot of athletes, if you're not really cognizant and mindful, you're probably not meeting your daily protein needs.
Right. So I think there's a lot out there about protein, and I want to talk about your journey with cancer and the Fuelin app. So I'm going to push ahead. Like I didn't realize this until I did the research for this podcast, but tell me about you're a cancer survivor.
Oh gosh, cervical cancer, not anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Nothing. Nope. Nothing significant. And I think, thank goodness for health coverage and health insurance. Right. Because at the time when I was living in San Francisco, I didn't have it, and Planned Parenthood that offers healthcare for women
Mhm.
and they found it in a screening. So I guess probably the most important thing I would take away from that is the fact that uh, Planned Parenthood, sorry, this turned into a social message. Planned Parenthood just isn't for abortions or birth control. It is a health care system for women and families that can't afford or don't have health care.
Mm, amazing. Yeah. So and go and get screened. Like even
Yes.
I'm pretty guilty of like not being up to date on my pap smear and that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Like,
And
yeah.
I just had my like, what is it? They check, every year, and it just came back like still no, no return. And it's like, okay, this is why we do this stuff, so that we can take care of ourselves and
Yeah.
live long. So yes, everyone go out, get that uncomfortable pap and get your boobs checked, get the
Yeah.
mammogram.
What we need is for them to invent just like better ways. Like so there are the archaic ways of testing with the implements that are used. It's just like somebody figure this out, please.
Yes, yes. It was designed. I mean, we could get into a whole discussion of the medical field and men creating, the tools, the devices, the everything involved with all this. Like, prostate exams are not like, they don't put them in a machine and squeeze that. Like, it's done by hand, right? Like, it is very gentle.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's nothing made out of metal going in
not
there.
sitting in a machine. Again, I haven't had one, but from what I understand, this is like, I don't know, do they like sing to them and soothe them, probably, like where we're stuck in this ice cold room, either legs in a very awkward position or boobs in a very awkward position. So yeah, someone should change the system.
100%. Yeah. Okay. And just recently the Fuelin app have joined our podcast as one of our sponsors. And I know you're involved with them. How did you get involved with Fuelin?
I wish that I had a transition to go from prostate exams to,
I know.
wish that I was
just dove
that good on my feet to be like, well, while we're speaking of testing and recording and things that were designed for men only by men, the Fuelin app is, I think, the importance of having an on-hand system to manage how you fuel. So Fuelin, what we do is we connect your training, so either from Training Peaks or today's plan, and implement into that our fueling recommendations. So daily, what you should be, again, not specifically because I don't know what's in your kitchen or what you feel like eating that day, but what your protein, fat, and carbohydrate needs are for that day in general, and then specifically what you would need to fuel your different sessions. So the benefit of having your training in there is not only do I know basically what you'll be doing for each day, but I can see, oh, this is a 4-hour brick. It's a 3-hour ride and an hour run. And they're going to be some intervals at race intensity at this. So I know that I'm going to, recommend that you are, fueling properly, hydrating properly. So I can kind of cater that specifically to your different training sessions, as well as make sure, like I said earlier, that you're properly fueling your body every day to get the most out of it. So each week, the athletes, when their coaches put their new training in, notifies me, and I can run their nutrition plan, check to make sure that it's, where I want it. And the app has recipes and videos, and it syncs with MyFitnessPal and your Apple data. So I know what my athletes are eating. They know, we can have a discussion about it, and we can track, how your mood was, how your sleep was, how your training went. And then I can see and look back, oh, this was a hard week of training. Okay, well, your sleep was off. You didn't sleep as much as you could have or should have. You were under fueling on these days. And, your training wise, like maybe it's time we bring in your coach and say, okay, your body's not recovering. What should we be looking at? So it can not only be a discussion between the athlete and myself, but we can loop their coach in as well. And then, now you're like, you have a team of people working working and kind of taking care of you. And then the other element that I love about the app is we do carb and sweat testing. The carb, and call it carb testing, but really it's, we know that athletes that can consume more carbohydrates during racing are going to go faster and be able to perform longer. And a lot of athletes, either haven't trained their gut to be able to consume more. And so we ask for at least 12 weeks out from their A race. Okay, let's do some carbohydrate testing. Let's practice what you're going to do. And they can log that into the app. And then we can say, all right, right now you're consuming like 40 grams of carbs an hour. That's probably not enough. So let's see what ways we can work that in and increase that. Sweat testing, same thing. What are your hydration requirements? How much are you consuming? And from the athlete's perspective, a lot of them say, well, I never really spent the time to sit down and do all of this or really make it habitual. And I think that's one of the benefits is, if for better or worse, you have me or Scott in your ear all the time. Like, are you fueling regularly? Are you hydrating regularly? This ride didn't have enough, your sweat rate went up in this ride. Let's look at why. Oh, you didn't have enough electrolytes on, or the temperature was hotter. And so it's all this data that then we can help them kind of understand what's going on and turn it into performance.
How do you know someone's sweat rate? Are you weighing them?
Yep. Weigh them before and after, how much fluid they consumed, temperature, outside temperature. And again, that doesn't tell us sodium loss. Those are two separate things, but it does at least tell us, if they're losing, less than 1%, they're probably okay. 2 to 3%. Okay. We should, make sure that they're hydrating a lot. Oh, this person lost 5 to 9% of their body weight. Okay. Something we should, we have to look at the electrolytes they're using, how much fluid they're consuming. So yeah, it's
makes sense.
Somewhat simple formula.
Yeah. How it feels to me like, cause I loved, like I did the walkthrough with, is it Jonathan?
Yes. Yep.
Fuel and did the walkthrough. And I was like, oh, I said this in the podcast a couple of weeks ago, but like, I wish I'd had something like that. Like the way that it kicks you out a recipe sort of for what you need, it's kind of like that makes the process really easy. It's like, oh, here's the recipe for my recovery smoothie or my dinner or the thing that like the fueling that I need. But doesn't that kind of put you out of business?
Yes, which is great in that, I've always said, as much as I love working with athletes, I hope that they learn enough from me and then can go along about their own way. And I think the personal side of the coaching is what, like, there will always be athletes that want interpretation and want help understanding, and it's different. I can create formulas. Scott can create formulas that the science tells us works and what they need, but we have to look at the data and interpret the data and go, okay, this athlete, technically they could be on 1.2 grams per kilogram for protein every day, but they function better when they're at 1.6. So, so making those tweaks and adjustments, I think, and left to their own devices, even with an app, athletes will still, not do their sweat tests or not in, because training your gut to take on more carbohydrates can be somewhat uncomfortable and cumbersome. So they won't do it on their own if someone's not reminding them.
Oh, totally. I sort of asked that question about putting you in a business, like a bit tongue in cheek, because like, yeah, you can't, and like an app is amazing. And like I said, like, I love the idea of something that can actually compute what I need based on my training. I mean, it's a great idea. But at the end of the day, like the accountability that comes from a human that's the part that can't be replaced. Right?
Yep. And, the athletes that I get to talk to every week, I think they like, we talk about recipes, we talk about their fueling, we talk about what worked and what didn't. And I think that kind of teamwork feel, just like, you could, same thing with a coach, you could get a training plan, a 12-week training plan online. Right. Not the same thing as actually having a coach that knows you and can adjust. And so.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much. This has been fun and very easy. So thank you for the wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much. I there were some good laughs in there, and definitely topics that I haven't been able to cover before. So thank you for creating such a vibrant and, in my opinion, interesting hour. We can do it again.
Definitely.
Who knows what we'll discuss?
Exactly. As we head into summer, rest and recovery are critical for improving sports performance, reducing stress, and living a long and healthy life. We should all invest in better sleep. So, think about the thing you lay your head on for 8 hours a night. If it's not exactly right for you, it can lead to needless tossing and turning, or worse, have you waking up with an unrelenting kink in your neck. My new Lagoon pillow has helped me improve my sleep immensely by pairing me with the performance pillow that has everything I need. So I personally was matched with the Otter pillow. Shout out to Team Otter, which I love because it has a gentle cooling effect. And I was able to choose how much stuffing I wanted in it, which is super important to me because I'm doing a decent amount of CrossFit these days and my shoulders are kind of creaky. So having a pillow that is stuffed just to the right height keeps my neck and head in exactly the right position and comfortable for the entire night. And as of fall 2023, Lagoon launched their 100% mulberry silk pillowcases. It's cool to the touch, buttery soft, and great for your skin and hair. You've got to go check out this pillowcase if you want to feel great and look great every morning. Waking up for morning workouts has never felt better. I'm refreshed and pain-free thanks to my Lagoon pillow. To check it out for yourself, go to lagoonsleep.com/performance and take the 2-minute sleep quiz to find your perfect pillow match. And then use the code PERFORMANCE for 15% off your first purchase. That's code PERFORMANCE at lagoonsleep.com/performance, whole 15% off, and the link is in the show notes. You can just click through there. Endurance sports should be accessible to everyone, right? That's why we are so excited to be partnering with Motive. Motive is one of the fastest growing training apps in the world today, with thousands of amateur athletes signing up every month and a nearly perfect 4.9 star rating in the App Store. You are not a template, and your training plan should not be either. Prepare for running races, triathlons, cycling events, duathlons, or swim runs, however your season schedule shapes up, and get training written by some of the best coaches in the world in each discipline who know what it takes to help amateur athletes reach their goal on race day. The app takes the training written by those experts and then creates the most optimal training plan for your schedule, abilities, and goals. Plus, the training is fully customized to your race schedule, how much you can train each week, your current abilities, and the goals you want to achieve in your race. You can use the app for free as long as you want, or get all the upgraded features from the app for just $19.99 a month. But as a Feisty listener, you can sign up at mymotive.com and use the code Feisty for 2 months of full premium access. That's right, you get 2 months of premium for free. So you quite literally have nothing to lose. So head over to mymotive.com, mymotiv.com, and use the code Feisty, Feisty. And on a personal note, I know the founder of Motive, and he is driven to make triathlon and all endurance sports more accessible for the athletes who care about their performance, but who aren't quite ready for a full-time personal coach. If that sounds like you, definitely try the app for 2 months for free. You literally have nothing to lose.